And that's what I love doing. It's not about how much money I make, it's about continuing that story, especially in the Queen City, because there's so many stories to tell. I'll never run out of material.
Filmmaker, writer, documentary maker, composer, editor, Cam Miller, historian.
Hey, thank you, there you go.
Cam Miller is joining us on the Working Lunch today, and I wanted to open up with a clip to give people a little flavor of the work that you do. If we can hit that to start us off.
Local broadcast of this program is made possible in part by Johnny's Toys.
Once upon a time, there was a toy shop full of imagination and magic. But what if we could go back to once upon a time?
Oh, I just love Johnny's Toys. It's the fun place.
Please. Casket.
What if we once again used our imagination and believed in a little bit of magic?
So that is a clip from your Johnny's Toys. That's the opening of your Johnny's Toys documentary. Cam, you've been doing filmmaking for 20-odd years in town. What is it that inspires you to pick certain topics and tell stories? How do you find your topics?
Well, it's pretty easy for me because I've always documented things my whole life, and I remember things. I'm a big nostalgia guy. So, for instance, that clip, Johnny's, I went to Johnny's Toys as a kid, and I just happened to live in the same neighborhood as the son of Mr. Johnny.
Oh, wow.
And I got to befriend him. He invited me over to his warehouse, and I was like, this is a dream. I'm seeing all of the things that he collected. And again, he's not thinking of it as a story. He's just thinking this was my family business.
Right.
I go in there and I'm like, I see 50 million stories I can tell here. And of course, we take that, we start filming it. He had the original castle door from Lithonia Johnny, so I took a picture of that, and that's what you saw in the clip. I put it back into the spot where it once stood before the building was torn down.
Ah, that's cool.
And you do those things, and it's a domino effect, right? You start doing those things where you're starting to see these nostalgia pieces from your kid, and then you're like, well, I can do a film on this. What about Riverfront? I used to go to Riverfront all the time, and then I do a film on Riverfront. It snowballs, and I love doing it. It's my side gig. To keep the lights on, you do the composing things and the jobs for commercials and things like that. But this thing is my time, my dime. These local history stories it's so important, and it's a passion of mine that I will continue to do as long as I'm breathing this air.
Yeah, and I think that what you're doing, there's a lot of talk. Nostalgia as like a marketing tool is a big thing these days, but it feels like what you're doing specifically, like we saw in that clip from the Johnny's Toys doc, you're not leaning into the nostalgia as a member when to try to make people just yearn for something different. You really are telling a story of things that happened to let people understand where they came from.
Right, and it's specifically with that one. I went there as a kid. My dad took me there, so I, for the first time, incorporated myself into my film and showed 8mm of me crawling around the floor playing with toys and telling a story about how I got sick on the steps and couldn't go meet Darth Vader, but my dad went there to get it for me. And one of the cool stories about that is when I went to meet some of the people that worked there, they gave me an autographed picture of Darth Vader because I lost it over time, and I said, man, I wish I still had that.
Yeah.
They showed up and gave me one to say thank you for keeping the story alive of Johnny's.
The idea of Darth Vader signing autographs is extremely fun.
And that's a whole other film I could do about how they got him in, flew him in from New York, and all that went into that. It wasn't just some guy off the street. It was a big deal.
Wow, no kidding.
They had to pay him, put him up in a hotel. It was an actor.
Was it David Prowse, the actual guy, or just some big dude?
Though that'd be hilarious if that was the end of the story, where it was actually David Prowse. He takes his mask off at Scooby-Doo, right? And it's like, what is this about? But the stories that he told, I could have made a Ken Burns 10-part documentary on it. So the good thing is I'm going to screen it again this fall at the Lithonia Library, and we're going to do what I did when I did the original screening for that. I built a castle in my backyard, a replica castle.
Good grief.
And we put it in the coffee house where we did the original screening. And the idea was, as a kid, you went in with your key and you got something out on your birthday. This was, let's fill the castle, put the toys back, and we donate to all these charities around the area.
Oh, that's tremendous.
And it was such it was so rewarding. I mean, that was what it was about. The film was secondhand after that. So I love doing things like that where I can tie in history and also give back to the community.
Yeah, and you've got so many projects that do that. So much of your work is telling stories about this area. There is such a rich history going back, you know, a few decades, going back maybe a couple hundred years. There's really interesting stuff to talk about. You've got the Johnny's Toys doc there. You mentioned Latonia is an area that we talked about on the show not too long ago with Billy Maccabee, just about sort of the history of that neighborhood within Covington. And then there's all of your Cincinnati Reds work that you do with the Reds Hall of Fame. You're spinning a lot of different plates, man.
Yeah, and you know, my family will say, you need to slow down, and that just tells me that I need to go harder. I mean, and that's what, you know, like I'd mentioned before we started, I'm working on 5 films right now, and that's normal to me. I mean, that's just, I've composed the music, I'm doing the editing, I'm trying to find things that may be of interest to one film, and I realize, wait a minute, Johnny Bench doesn't belong in the Cincinnati Royals film. Sometimes I have to remember what I'm working on.
I was going to say, you're doing 5 different projects, and so the idea that things could start mashing up and accidentally get Johnny Bench into your Royals piece is rough.
So there might be like a hodgepodge film come out where it's just like everything. Throw that in the stew and see what comes out.
I know the one that you're looking to release relatively soon is your doc on the Cincinnati Royals, and you know, just going onto the internet and looking up old pictures from that tell me that logo that's on the far left there, please tell me, is that showing up in the doc? That's a wild picture.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the first few minutes of the film. Designed by an Enquirer guy, just an amazing, again, the story of the Royals. To think about it, an NBA team in Cincinnati. That's people can't really compute that now with the way the NBA is. But back then, it was a struggle to sell tickets, and they finally started to gain momentum. But unfortunately, they met their ultimate demise and then moved to Sacramento and became the Sacramento Kings.
How hard is it for you making documentaries about topics like that, about the Royals, to find, you know, primary source material, to find footage, especially for something that only lasted for a little bit and then has been gone for decades?
Yeah, well, again, thankfully the internet exists, because if it didn't, I mean, I have to go on newspapers.com, I have to go to these sites and just dig and dig and dig. I'll spend 7 or 8 hours just accumulating all of these things. But the great thing is I have all these connections throughout the city that I can say, didn't you say that your grandpa used to be the ball boy? And then I'll get that, and then he'll tell his story. And that's what I love. It's not just telling the story in facts, it's telling the story through other stories. You're getting these little things. Like, I'm working on a 1956 documentary right now on the Reds. And Frank Robinson, right? He set the rookie record for home runs. He used to get an apple pie for every home run he hit at the hotel he stayed at. And he had to stay at that hotel because that's the only place he was allowed to stay. So there's a story about that.
Is the hotel giving him the pie?
Yeah, it was on the house. So again, and that's where the film starts. It doesn't start with the cliche, Ted Kluszewski hits a home run over the wall.
Hearing the crack of the bat.
Right. You get this, that starts the film, and you're like, what's that about? And then you start going in, and then you're learning something, but you're also, there's that aspect of telling a story within a story where people can, sometimes it can get boring if you're sitting there for 10 hours and people are giving you the TikTok, this is what happened. When you can pepper in some of these human interest things, it captures the imagination of people, and then they're interested in it, and then they're telling that story, and on it goes.
Yeah. You talked about having 5 things that you're working on right now, and then also, you know, things that you do for you versus things that maybe pay the bills. How is it for you? You've been an independent filmmaker in this city for 20-odd years. You also have a Substack that I think is a little bit of income for you, talking about historical things also. But in terms of being a creative and professionally being creative in this city, how is that from a employment perspective? I mean, you're paying the bills. It's enough. You can work enough and be paid enough to be creative.
Yeah, I don't live the Steven Spielberg life yet. That's the goal. I'm still waiting for Disney to call me. So Disney, call me, and you can buy me out, and I make some more money to make some more films. But you do what you do, and I always say this. I would rather live in a one-room shack with just my video equipment and just make my films with my dogs and just live my life. Because that's, to me, what's important. It's not about how much I can make. I mean, I have to keep the lights on, right? You have to do those things. But it's telling those stories that I always get a kick out of telling a story, and somebody 10 years ago, I just saw your documentary that you put on YouTube that I'd done a long time ago, I'd forgotten it, and then they reminded me, oh, that's right, I did that, and I told my grandkids this story, and now they have it on their phone, and it just keeps going on and on, and that's what I love doing. It's not about how much money I make, it's about continuing that story, especially in the Queen City, because there's so many stories to tell. I'll never run out of material.
Yeah, that's and the idea of wanting to tell something authentic authentically and make sure that you're being true to the source material is sort of an added, I don't want to say challenge, but it's another responsibility that I think you take really seriously.
Yeah, I really try to, and I always 7 or 8 sources, and you're really digging deep. And again, and some people say it's, I may be a control freak, and I've been called that. But the thing I always say is, a painter gets to paint his picture and paint his masterpiece, and he doesn't hire somebody to do the blues. He doesn't bring somebody in to do the oranges. He does all of it, and he knows when he sits back that work stands on its own. I painted that masterpiece. And I always set out to do that with every one of my films, to compose the music, edit it, get the sound, do it all. Sometimes it's difficult, but I don't think I would have it any other way, because it's my vision. I know what I want to do, and it cuts out a lot of the hassle of having to do other things. Again, the problem with that is that you do 5 films, you kind of go crazy sometimes, but I love what I do.
Well, and also that's a little bit sort of in the face too of like what a small business filmmaking can be, and how film directors and independent film people specifically have to have such an entrepreneurial mindset, and working with other folks, and the idea that everybody comes together to execute the director's vision on stuff. You're handling turning every knob.
Yeah, you don't know how many times I got in an argument with the sound guy, and it happened to be me. How many times I've composed a piece and I'm like, that didn't sound right. I got to talk to that guy. Oh, wait a minute, that was me. I do have a great relationship with a guy that works in Detroit, Oakland University, and I'll compose a piece of music and I'll send it to him, and he'll, for credit for some of his kids, he'll record that for me as a credit. So they'll send me back that music so I can have actual violins and cellos and timpanis and trombones. So some of that stuff is me composing it, sending it off, and having it sent back. And it's free because it's a credit for them for their classes. So it's a win-win situation.
Well, and also the idea that you are connecting with people that actually do things. Obviously generative AI is something that gets talked about a lot, and you are working in the creative field. There's a separate conversation about the way that everybody having a video camera in their pocket has like democratized media. But then on top of that now, just typing a few words into a computer and letting it make something for you. You, as someone who is taking the time to get a real musician on the phone and to find the real door from Johnny's Toys and put it in place, like that's putting in the work, and that's part of the process.
Absolutely, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It hurts my business, and it has hurt my business the last few years because of AI. And it's not something that, I have to pay attention to it, but till the day I don't exist on this earth, I will always continue to do the work and do actual authentic things. It's just my style. It's what I grew up on. My dad took me to see Star Wars in the theaters, and I'm seeing this, and all of these things looked like a place I could touch. I could touch the Falcon. And I knew as time went on, there was things you could tell. And as we've gone on, that AI has kind of taken over. Like you said, push a button, and then some 12-year-olds win an Oscar because he put. So I'm the opposite. I love going out, doing the work, meeting real people, tangible things, because I feel that's the soul of filmmaking. It's the soul of everything, but especially the arts, music and film. I want it to be authentic as possible till the bitter end.
Yeah, it's all that stuff is called the humanities.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
There's a reason for that. Hey, we got to take a break. We got more with filmmaker Cam Miller. I want to talk about your work with the Reds Hall of Fame, how you choose projects, and a lot more. Cam, how did your work with the Reds develop? You've been working with the Reds, specifically the Reds Hall of Fame, for a number of years now. You have a ton of work that you've produced for them. How did all that come about, in addition to all the other work that you do?
Well, that's kind of where I got my start. I was working there in education. They needed a film. I said, can you do this? And I said, sure. And I did it. And then when I left the Reds and started Cam Miller Films, they kept calling and saying, can you do this? And I said, I absolutely can do this. And I've been doing it for 20 years now. Some of the most fun experiences there. One of the great things I did was I did a film on Crosley Field for them, and Eleanor Klazuski, she was in the stands, and she's crying. And I'm like, uh-oh, what have I done? I made her cry. She came up to me afterwards, thank you so much for bringing Big Teddy back. Because she hadn't seen him in so long, right? So especially in action, it was like, so I brought that back. And I knew then, when that happened, I was destined to do this for them. So they always have given me projects that I continue to do. I love every single one I do for them, because it's just so much fun to live in that world and to talk about old baseball all the time. I love it.
Yeah, and so much of what you do too has such a strong emotional component. Obviously, that's going to be part and parcel when you're doing documentary stuff and nostalgia-based things. Does it ever really surprise you when somebody has a strong emotional reaction like that?
Absolutely, because I lived at that clip for like 2 years. I'm watching it over and over. I'm in there drinking pots of coffee, churning out the content, and then when it's already on the screening day, and it's like, you've already put in all the work. Let's just see what happens. And I'm nervous because I'm like, what's the reaction going to be? But when you get somebody like that, the wife of a legend like that,
Yeah.
and you think that it's bad news, but she comes up to you, takes your hand, and says, Cam, thank you for bringing Teddy back. That was the moment for me when I realized I'm doing something important, not just sharing history and facts and figures, but the human element. It always comes back to that. And that was one of those moments I'll never forget.
I want to ask you about, in that vein, when you are picking stories and you've picked a topic to tell about, and the detail that you're choosing to go into, you know, in the 1978 Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, Perry White is talking to Lois, or Jimmy's talking to Lois, and he says, "Gee, Miss Lane, how do you get such great stories?" And she says, "A good reporter doesn't get great stories, Jimmy. A good reporter makes them great." And for you, if you're telling a story, how much of it is like letting the thing sort of speak for itself versus, you know, the urge to want to zhuzh it up a little bit and maybe make things compelling?
Right. I've been so honored and blessed and humbled that it very rarely happens where I'm like, I have a thing here, but I need to dig a little deeper. One thing happens, and this was something that happened when I made my Covington Blue Sox film. The Covington Blue Sox were an independent professional baseball team that played in Covington in 1913. They lasted 4 months. But the city was so bound and determined to have a professional baseball team. Unfortunately, they weren't allowed to have a professional baseball team because they're Reds, and there was a thing called the 5-mile clause, which means you can't play within 5 miles. But they had a minor league team, so they could get away with it. And once they did that, it was this one story led to another story. This person went to the game. The guys were coming home from the steel factories and helping build the stadium so it was done in time for opening day. It's like I didn't have to do any work for that. It was just playing out in the newspapers of 1913 for me day by day. I just took that, put visuals to it, which was difficult at the time because there's no team pictures. I mean, I had to create the art and draw them out, do the field. I actually redesigned the field, the blueprints, and was able to present it to the great-grandson of the architect that built the park in 1913. It's things like that. And again, going back to the Kluszewski, doing things like that, it's that human element that you're touching somebody else, and they're never going to forget that. And I didn't have to put in hardly any work. It was just pay attention to what's out there and figure out that story. That way I don't have to kind of build it up and try to make it any more exciting. The excitement's there in black and white.
Yeah. Do you find yourself needing to creatively separate out topics that you're going to make a film about versus something you're going to write about in your Substack? How does that hierarchy go?
Right. I mean, that's a great question. Most of the time, the Substack stuff is because I know I'll never get to do a film while I still got my, wits about me. I know that I'll never get to that stuff. So I can take that stuff, like a history of all of the train stations in Cincinnati. I would never get to tell that on film, but I can put that in my Substack, and I can put in, this train station was here. Now this is where Paul Brown Stadium is, or Paycor Stadium, or Great American Ballpark, or Riverfront, whatever the stadiums were. There was all of these stations and tracks, and people will always ask, what's that track go to? And well, here's the story of it. And then you put that on there, knowing I won't get to do it visually, I'll be able to tell that story, so that's kind of like my outlet for the things that I can't do. But sometimes I am able to take my films and build upon it. So if I'm doing a film like the 1937 flood, for instance, I can do a story that digs deeper into it that I couldn't tell in the film.
Well, and you have to be able to recognize what story lends itself to something visual or just writing words down.
Exactly. That's a great point. And I do that. I probably do 3 or 4 a week that I've got saved up for later that I know, well, that's not going to work for the film, but let me file this away because that's going to make a great story.
Is it difficult for you to balance between doing something that's maybe more for you on the creative side versus something that's going to pay the bills?
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. It's not an easy thing at all because I know that once I'm paying the bills, I'm doing those jobs. I know that in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about, man, I'm doing a film on the Esquire, and I really can't wait to get that movie poster from eBay so I can shoot that shot. There's always something churning about the next thing going on, and with all those films I'm doing, it makes it hard, but I know I've 20 years of doing this, you learn the balance, and that's the key, learning how to balance everything out without going crazy.
Yeah, what a fun balance that is.
I know.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with, as far as the documentary work goes and the way you are able to find primary source material, but I know what a struggle that can be. Again, we're talking about some things that are a few decades old, maybe a couple 100 years old. Is there a time that you have a memory of that was like the worst moment of, boy, I can't find anything to make this work, what do I do, and what's the way out? out.
Yeah, I did a film on the Covington Stars, another baseball team in 1875. They played baseball. They're the reason, actually, that the 5-mile rule exists.
Oh, wow.
That's the reason why, because Cincinnati Reds said, we got to make up a rule when we start the National League in 1876. Lo and behold, Big Brother across the river did what they did. And it was a complete business decision, and you can't fault them for that. But there was no photographs of any of these players, none. And I had to draw them myself and put them on there. And it's what other choice do you have, right? You got to make a film. You got to have some visuals.
Yeah.
So I started doing the blueprints to the stadiums. I started all the fields they played. I made up all of these box scores and kind of animated them to make them. You have to do something to liven it up. There wasn't anything going on in 1875. People weren't pulling out their phones and saying, "Let me film this home run hit by this guy."
Nobody cared about ball
Nobody
players.
cared.
You would go to the game, but it wasn't like you were tracking stats.
You'd go
or
to the
anything.
game, you have a few beers, you go home, and you get ready for the job the next day. And it was all daytime too, because there was no night baseball, of course, back then. So it's a struggle sometimes, and I always think, why did I start this? But then at the end of the day, when you've got a half-hour film, 45-minute film, and you're like, this tells a great story. And then you see that reaction when you do a premiere at a theater or at a library or anywhere where I've shown my films. You get that reaction, and you're just like, that's why I did it. And I love doing it, and I'll continue to do it.
We've got a little something here to put up for you. There we go. That's right, your stat about the Reds and the World Wide Web. This is amazing.
Isn't it crazy?
That is a wild stat, and you're dipping into all sorts of information about the Reds and baseball history, and you're doing this. You said you've got a new one now that you're doing about the Reds in the 50s.
Yep, 1956. I'm doing a film on them. I've got a Finley and Western film on the spot where Crosley Field was. That's a big project. That's going to be fun because I've pinpointed where Babe Ruth hit a home run, the cobblestone that it hit. And I'm still trying to get the city of Cincinnati.
How do you find that?
It's so remarkable. The attention to detail in newspapers. It went over the center field wall and it bounced up and hit off this building and a child stood it. I found out where the child was standing because there was a cop standing there he was talking to. And I got the family's remembrance of that. I'm able to do the math, which I wasn't the best at in high school, but I've learned how to be good for my films.
Yeah.
And you find where the cobblestone was. Now the catch is, how do I get the city of Cincinnati to let me take my jackhammer down there, dig up that cobblestone, and use that as an effect for part of my film? Don't think I haven't tried.
Yeah. Speaking of
Still working on that.
Yeah. Speaking of creative walls that one runs into.
Yep.
Was it difficult to take off your Sherlock Holmes hat to wear that one when you came in today?
100%. And by the way, let me just say for the record that I understand this Casual Friday. This is Casual Friday. When I do my films, it's using a smoking jacket and a pipe.
Right on. Listen, it's important to me that the guest looks good. Boy, Cam, you got so much different going on. Anything else you want to promote that's coming up?
A lot coming out. I guess the best thing I would say is go to YouTube, Cam Miller Films, go to Twitter, Facebook, Google Cam Miller Films. Most of it's true. I'm on there. You can find me. You'll see my Substack. You'll see all those things. I'm working on a lot of different things right now. And the holiday season is going to be fun because I'm doing the Johnny's tour back again. And we're going to redo that for charities. We're going to do the film. I'm also working on a book for that. We're going to do a little small book.
What? And don't you have pets and like
I
a
have
wife and
pets
kids
a
and
life.
stuff?
The pets are my great. They're on Team Cam Miller Films, so they sit there and at the meetings and they chew their bones and they approve yes or no. This is not going to work. So I've got a good office staff at home.
Wow. And then do we have a release? Speaking of pets, there it is. There's
Yes,
your buddy
Lincoln.
Lincoln. I'm sorry to hear about
Yeah,
that.
thank you. He would have been 10 today. Good dude. He was my best friend. He'd been in office for 9 years. He didn't quite make it to 10. Every single day, he would be in my office laying in bed, and I would look over and I would know that I'm doing something right or I'm doing something wrong, because there's nothing like the love of a pet to keep you on the right track.
Do you ever think about like doing something pet-related film-wise?
100%. I've got 3 that I've been offered, and I'm thinking about it. So when I'm 85, I'll be back on this show, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, well, listen, I'd like to have you back before you're 85. Cam Miller, local filmmaker, local historian, really fascinating guy, and a lot of stuff posted for people just to be able to watch on your YouTube page.
Just for free, yeah. All of my local films are free on YouTube. Go
Check
there
it
and
all
watch
out. Cam Miller Films, really wonderful stuff. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack.